Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, it's my great privilege to interview Xavier Beteta, a Guatemalan composer who was recently involved in Deus Musica's composer project. Javier, thanks for taking this time to talk with us and give us an inside look into your process behind setting Psalm 57.
Thank you, Josh, for the opportunity, and it's nice to see you through here. And yeah, it will be an honor to talk with you about the music.
To start off, why don't you give us a snapshot of your musical journey? How did it all begin?
Yeah, so I was born in Guatemala and Guatemala City. And I always had an inclination for music for some reason. I was the one who asked my parents to take lessons, to put me to take lessons. So they put me to take piano lessons when I was 10. And right there, I started advancing. And around the same time, maybe after 6 months or a year, maybe when I was 11, I also started composing my own little songs, usually in the style of the piano piece that I was learning.
Mm-hmm.
So I have, a few little pieces from that time that I wrote that sound more or less like, Bach little minuets or.
Yes, nice.
Yeah,
Well, it's a good start, right?
yeah,
Great
yeah.
start to learn from one of the greatest.
That's right.
Yeah. At what point did you tell yourself, I want to be a composer, or I want to have a life in music? Or when did that sort of come about? When did you sense that kind of calling into music?
Yeah, it was about the same time. I would say maybe I was 12 when I really decided that I really wanted to become a composer. That, at the same time, I used to read a lot about the lives of composers. My
Mm-hmm.
dad used to have
Yeah.
this encyclopedia that had all these
Oh,
biographies
nice.
of Mozart and
Nice.
Beethoven and Bach, and I really used to admire the life of the composers and the stoical way of approaching life, and how Beethoven was deaf, but even though
Mm.
he was deaf, he would still compose and sort of like follow destiny. So these things were very appealing to me, and I decided I wanted to be a composer more or less when I was maybe 12, 13. I
Mm-hmm.
kept composing. It was something that I really enjoy and liked.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and of course, at the same time, I started pursuing more, music studies after taking lessons privately in a little music school called Nueva Canción in Guatemala. Then I entered the conservatory when I was 14,
Mm-hmm.
and I studied there until I was 19, and then I
Mm-hmm.
came to the U.S. So.
Okay. And when you came to the U.S., what was that transition like from Latin America, then in the United States, and studying here?
Yeah, it was. I mean, completely different. I used to speak English, but so 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 I had to like really learn all the ways to say things here.
Yes.
I came to do my undergrad. It was a transition that was hard in a way, but not super hard.
Mm-hmm.
So it was hard in the sense that I missed my family, I missed the food, I
Mm-hmm.
miss friends, I miss different ways of how you do things uh,
Mm-hmm.
in Guatemala versus the U.S. But in general, it was a good experience. I had a very good piano teacher at that time, and she really taught me a lot. Sylvia Kersenbaum was her name. So I
Mm-hmm.
was happy because I was pursuing
I,
music.
I have great respect for musicians who will study in a country very different from where they grew up in a language that is not their first language. For me, um, I was born into a bicultural household, and so my dad spoke Spanish, my mom spoke English, and I learned them both around the same time. So for me, going
Uh-huh.
to school, even though I too had grown up in Mexico and sometime also in Guatemala, for me, I feel like the transition was pretty quick because it was not, I didn't have to learn a new language, and I wasn't learning all this new information in a language that wasn't like truly my own. So
Yeah.
I have huge respect for you and all students who make that transition. It's big. It's a big deal. And I do what I can now that I'm teaching at a university to to make international students feel welcome and to provide a space for them as much as possible. Now, transitioning to your music, I'd like to take a moment to listen to an excerpt from your setting of Psalm 57 for voice and piano. A lot of people set the Psalms and they come from very different walks of life. I'm wondering what your particular spiritual journey has been and how that might have impacted the way you set this Psalm.
Yeah, so growing up in Guatemala, I grew up Christian, more the evangelical brand.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was, Christian, and my grandparents too, very, very Christian, and they really, taught me a lot about reading the Bible. And, in fact, when I was sick, I don't know if I got, um, chicken pox or something. All I did was read a lot of the Bible during that time when I had to stay home. The Psalms are, to me, one of the most interesting books in the Bible because they are attributed to King David and that he wrote most of them, not all, but wrote them at different times in his life. But they are also important, I think, in some traditions where the Psalms they become music as well, and they also are considered poetry. And to some extent, sometimes they use Psalms to either particular purposes in life to like pray about something or to healing or some sort of that. So it's a very important type of literature. The one that I set to music there was Psalm 57, I think, which is the one where King David was hiding from Saul, and he went into a cave, and he prays to God, to help him. So it starts with this prayer for mercy, for you don't know what's going to happen. Have mercy on me, my God, have mercy on me, for in you I take refuge. I will take refuge in the shadow of your wings until the disaster has passed. And it's interesting because the psalm has like two sections. So the second section, there is some sort of answer or there is a change in the mood. And then David says, I will praise you, Lord, among the nations. I will sing of you among the peoples, for great is your love, reaching to the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches to the skies. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over the earth. And also a little bit before it says, I will sing and make music, awake my soul. So it's a nice song because first it gives you this sort of dark feeling, this sort of like idea that you don't know what's going to happen. You are totally destroyed in a way. And then it switches and is thankful to God and has hope that things are going to go well. In the music, I start with a section that is sort of dark and not defined. At least, well, the singing part is defined, but the piano sounds are more or less inside the piano and not very clear harmonies. And for the second half of the piece has more of a dance-like feeling with the tambourine, kind of like praising. So I try to explore those avenues, the two avenues.
I love your use of extended technique. And for a lot of people who are hearing your psalm setting, maybe they're not used to hearing all these different ways of playing the piano. But it's true, the piano is not just something that you can play traditionally as most people are used to hearing, but there's this incredible space inside the piano for getting all sorts of interesting sounds. And I love that about your setting in particular with the first half. Using these extended techniques, is this something that you do often in your music?
Yes and no.
Hmm.
Depends on the music, but yeah, I have used extended techniques before, and I love them, and I like to use these sounds just because they expand the colors that you have, you know, as opposed to just composing with notes. You can use them to express different, you know, different feelings or different ideas that you want that are totally different. It depends on what the music wants and how the music is asking me to
Hmm.
go, and then
Hmm.
I decide whether I use extended techniques or not. In that
Hmm.
particular sound setting, I also used an e-bow, which was this sort of
Hmm.
electronic bow that you place inside the piano on top of the strings, and the e-bow holds the reverberation of the piano a little longer. So it
Okay.
gives an idea of something that is there but it's not, you know, like kind of like this
Hmm.
reverb that you don't know exactly how it's being produced. So I like that,
Hmm.
sort of like a presence, maybe the presence of God or something that is not easy to point.
Mm, that's fascinating. One of the things that I noticed in the setting is that there seem to be references to Middle Eastern chant,
uh,
and I'm wondering how did that come about?
for some reason in maybe my 3 or 4 late pieces, starting with, I think it's the Abandoned Cathedral and then Resurrection of Memory, I have been using a Middle Eastern scale. So D, E flat, F sharp, G, A, B flat, C sharp, and D.
Mm,
It's a sort of D minor, but with the E flat and the
mm,
and the F sharp there. I like the sound, I like the sonority, and gives me some reference to Jewish, Sephardic, Middle
mhm,
Eastern, Arabic type of music. When I was setting the psalm, I wanted the psalm to also be rooted in what it is, which is, before being a Christian writing, it was a Jewish writing. So I wanted to
mhm.
have that feeling and that reference to Middle Eastern sound as well.
I will praise thee, O Lord, I will praise thee among the people. I will praise thee, O Lord, I will praise thee among the people. I will sing unto thee among the nations. I will sing unto thee among the nations. I will praise thee, O Lord, I will praise thee among the people.
In the second half, you introduce the tambourine,
Hmm.
and I'm assuming that's maybe another reference to this
Correct.
older Middle Eastern soundscape.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I also wanted for both the pianist and the mezzo soprano to have a little extra, you know, that is not just piano and voice. So I gave the tambourine to the singer and the ebow to the pianist, so they will have
Mm,
a little extra instrument there to
yeah.
do.
Yeah, that's great. It's very effective, and it's a surprise, especially since for most people who are listening to this piece, at least when it first starts out, it seems like, okay, this is a straightforward piece. There's a piano there, there's a singer, and then there's all these extra sounds that make their way into the soundscape, and it really it enriches it,
Yeah.
enriches the experience. Yeah, it's a great choice.